It's now time to bring together for a fireside chat 3 Nordic scale-ups who believe that our lives become more productive when we breathe in better air. This next discussion is hosted by Gavin Gallagher.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us. I've got a couple of people joining me here today, and their names are Martin from AirThings, Rick Aller for 720.io, and Jan-Kristian from IISY from Finland. So, guys, welcome. How are you all doing?
Very good, Gavin.
Good.
Looking forward to this conversation.
Very much so.
I know I'm working from a home office, but it's after all a fireside chat, so...
Yes, you've done it right. Nice one, Martin.
Well, it's ReCoTech and I have construction noises around me, so I did my part.
You got a nice reindeer behind you then, Rick. Yeah. So tell us where you guys, each of you, are coming in from on the virtual world.
I'm currently in Oslo, Norway, in central Oslo, and at home in my flat, because our offices are second wave now in Norway, so all offices are back down, closed.
Much like myself. Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm at the office in Helsinki, because this is the only place that's empty currently, so
I see that. I see Jan-Kristian is trying to join us, so. We won't wait for Jan. We'll carry on, and hopefully he'll join us in a moment. I just wanted to start with, if you guys, here's Jan now. Hi, Jan-Kristian. It's nice to see you. We were worrying that we were going to miss you. Can you tell us where are you in Finland as well, in Helsinki?
Yeah, I'm in Finland, but in Espoo. So.
Okay. Well, welcome. I thought I would invite each of you guys to just give us a very brief introduction of who you are and what exactly you do and what your company does, just to kind of start the conversation going. So why don't we start with Rick, since he's the first person I see on my screen.
Great. So I'm nervous, so I have a cheat sheet here for my pitch. That's never a good sign. So we're an AI-based analytics platform for indoor environmental quality monitoring. And we've spent the past 7 years developing AI to interpret indoor environmental quality data, everything from air quality to also thermal comfort, noise, to make sure that this data is interpreted and that intelligent and actionable intelligence is at every relevant stakeholder's fingertips to improve on the environment and to make sure that all the people in both offices, in schools, and at home have a productive, healthy, and comfortable working environment.
Thanks very much, Rick. Nicely put there. Martin, the next person on my screen, can you tell us what it is that AirThings is doing?
AirThings. I can indeed. So we're a Norwegian technology company, AirThings. We started 13 years ago. So I know in the category of scale-ups here, but we had an IPO 2 weeks ago on the Oslo Stock Exchange. So we just kind of made a very important milestone there. But we develop wireless and battery operated indoor air quality sensors. So gathering a lot of the data that platforms like Rick and 720 Degrees would use for their optimization. And it's both for the consumer market and for commercial real estate. So our history is particularly around radon gas detection. So we have a patent on our own radon gas sensor that fits into the same unit, so you can remotely continuously monitor and optimize your building for radon mitigation. But it also has seven other sensors to ensure you have a healthy indoor environment, CO2, volatile organic compounds, temperature, humidity that are streamed directly to the AirThings cloud, where you can also very simply view it and manage your building or access the data through an API, open data to, for example, a 720. And I think with my fire burning, the air quality is not ideal now.
Oh, it's seeing a red line. Yeah, I see. Interesting. Well, thank you, Martin. Jan-Kristian, if you'd like to give us a little introduction of yourself and your company, please.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gavin. Well, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for IISY, and that means that it's my job to make these high-tech innovations easy to buy for the customers. And we are actually an engineering company. We're a digital engineering company. And our mission is to prevent the indoor climate problems in large building portfolios. So that's what we are doing. And we help our customers to lead with data. And that's the function we have. And in order for us to do that, we have a complete indoor climate data system that integrates into any building and into our customers' BMS systems. And then we have an expert engineering service that can help to use the data for the customers. So we actually have a indoor climate leadership as a service type of product. And then finally, we help our customers to communicate with the clients, the tenants, and to track their satisfaction to the climate and so on. So we're a team of 20 plus now. We had 8 people starting this Monday. So there's still opportunity in this post-COVID era. And the core is that our engineering team is making this indoor climate leadership service for 140 customers at the moment, with over 1 million square meters as we speak. So, and the customers are property investors, they are property managers, the public sector, and also now construction companies.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Jan-Kristian. Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad you clarified that IISY is pronounced easy. So it wasn't immediately obvious to me, not being a Norwegian or a Finnish person. I wanted to ask, first of all, before we go anywhere, I need to ask Martin. I see a very Irish-looking name, and yet he's based in Norway. And I'd just like to know, what's the history there, Martin?
Well, sometime in the 80s in a refugee camp in Eritrea during Live Aid, an Irish engineer met a Norwegian nurse.
Right.
And forward a few years, and I'm the result. I'm a Norwegian Irishman. So I do have my family's from Galway, yes.
I noticed the name immediately, and I thought, okay, there's going to be some Irish connection there. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. The obvious thing that everyone is talking about is COVID. And so we're definitely going to be going into that today. But let's just go back before COVID was the major issue. You guys have been in business before COVID began, and one of your companies is just done an IPO. So clearly it's been around for quite a while. Maybe one of you would like, I'll call on maybe Rick to start with. Rick, what are the benefits of air quality and understanding air quality from, say, a residential point of view? And I'll ask somebody else about the commercial side.
Yeah, so residential point of view is interesting because you're a little bit more limited from the engineering perspective in most residential homes. And it's much more up to the behavior of the occupant and long-term maintenance of the facility and all these things that you can have. And that's actually an interesting development with COVID. But of course, a little bit before, we didn't actually have a productive result and not a return on investment for a residential building necessarily. It's all up to the occupants, but the stakes are much higher. So people spend the most time there when they're indoors, hopefully not spending more time at the office. But so health-wise, productivity as well, all of these things, now we've kind of moved into a phase where it's becoming a work environment. And it's even for corporates a place to kind of get more value out of your employees, your team, your coworkers. Everyone can work better, be healthier, be more productive. And this is a big change, and really it's something where you can interpret everything with air quality to limit your own actions, to have a better kind of cognitive environment, to have a healthier environment. There's a lot more PM 2.5 indoors due to cooking. And there's like when the fire alarm goes off at home, which most have probably experienced at some point. That's not a very healthy environment. And opening windows, all of these things which we have available to us in a home to decrease carbon dioxide. We have a lot more tighter spaces. We have VOCs. We have everything that Martin listed. We have in homes, and we have to be kind of proactive to mitigate those to live a long and healthy life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I agree. Jan-Kristian, I'd like to just call on you. In terms of the commercial side, I'm very conscious of this, given my area of expertise is commercial real estate and productivity and things of that nature. Can you tell us, I mean, just from your perspective, the value of air quality and the ability to monitor it and review it?
Absolutely. Well, all stakeholders get some value out of better air quality conditions, but especially the investors like yourself, they got a lot of value out of this. And first of all, you get savings on your operating expenses when you manage your buildings properly and optimally. Then, of course, you also get higher value for your buildings, so your value develops. You could also be getting some revenue increases by having more satisfied tenants in and having them staying for longer, so having less downtime and less empty space. And also, perhaps the tenants are more willing to pay for good air quality as well. So that could be something new in this era. But then, of course, there are other values that are present today for responsible investors, and that's, of course, the sustainability targets and these ESG targets that you were referring earlier to. So definitely it helps to know where to reduce this reduce energy and so on. And you can't really do that efficiently unless you know also how it impacts your indoor climate. So I would say, what do you think? It's quite a lot of value.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to ask next, Martin. Yes, please, if you would like to come in with any comments that you have on that.
I just want. So I've been working in the field now for the last 2 years. I'm originally a software developer, and it just startles me still how we're not more conscious or concerned about the air that we're breathing. Just think about it. Like you go into McDonald's, and you have a cheeseburger, you get a full nutritional breakdown on the contents. You can make an informed decision about what's the healthy lifestyle for me, and you know how the different foods impacts our bodies. More and more, we're going around with fitness watches and smartwatches, counting every heartbeat, every step, gamifying it, giving us the data to optimize our lives. But the air that we're breathing, and I'm probably a bit over average concerned about this, and I'm looking into it, but I'm just so startled the more I learn how much is impacting not only our traditionally in a built environment, air quality has been a comfort parameter, but it's a health parameter, and it's a cognitive, as Rick was talking about as well, it's a cognitive abilities parameter. And the researchers are showing, like they did a big cohort study now, both in Netherlands and in Denmark, looking at CO2 levels, where they saw, I think it was a 6% improvement on language scores, 23% improvement on mathematics for schools where their average level. So they did a big cohort study across schools. They looked at schools where average CO2 levels were below 1,000 parts per million, and schools were above 1,200 parts per million. And then during the correlations, they saw this small attainment gap. Extrapolate that over 13 years of education. And why are we not more outraged and ensuring that every school has that level of air quality indoors? And similarly, in the US, they've looked at office environments, both CO2 and volatile organic compounds that were mentioned already, and how that impacts our, as knowledge workers, attach our ability for strategic thinking, information handling. Just a few hundred parts per million increase in CO2, and you're already deteriorating your ability to process information.
Very interesting.
But I think the challenge from an investor point of view, and I imagine like this, is that it's seen as a nice to have because it's so unmeasurable. There's a dilemma in terms of who takes the costs and where's the benefit. It's so much easier, even though it's less than 1%, maybe 1 or 2% of the total cost in the building, energy consumption. That's where all the focus and energy attention is going, right? Because you can actually measure month on month. Okay, how much energy do we use? Can we optimize a little bit? Yeah, we got it down. 90% of your costs are the people inside the building, and you're maybe doing a 10, 20% reduction in cognitive abilities, but it's a longer term continuous grind, harder to measure in a quantifiable way that gives us a clear ROI. And that's the challenges with air quality in buildings, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things that I found as a developer of office buildings is that we put in the equipment, and I recognize that you produce software that measures, but the actual companies that produce the air handling units that are, say, for example, in an office, we would use companies like Mitsubishi, and they put their air handling unit in, and there's a duct bringing it into the office, and then there's the fan coil units inside the office, and the equipment goes in at a huge expense. I mean, we would spend millions on the installation of the equipment, and we would expect it to have a 20-year lifespan, or certainly 15-year lifespan. And you guys are coming along and measuring the air quality based on a system that could be 10 years old or something like that. How are you noticing that? Are you noticing differences of that nature? Rick, I'll ask you just for your comment on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So there's a lot of studies around it as well, which confirm that most of these the systems aren't actually upkept after even 2 or 3 years, and use changes in buildings. So it's not a static environment for 20 years to go, even though we want to keep it that way. And we want to keep the quality the same way, but people change, the building's use changes, all of these things, and there isn't really optimization after that. And that's why services such as monitoring and then added engineering expert services such as Jan-Kristian also said, is essential to make sure that these are functioning as they should. And it shouldn't be every 5 years, because as I said, there are studies which say that after 2 years, a lot of upkeep is gone. And if the use changes after that, then we have a completely different environment. And this is where we then go to what Martin said as well about the PPM increase just by a couple hundred ppm. I mean, companies might be losing money on this. And some of these studies are absolutely controversial and are a little bit exaggerated, maybe. Some say that. So I wouldn't say that it's definite that they're losing billions. But if you do reference some of this research and compare it to, for instance, Finnish numbers, there's a loss of about 650 million euros in pure productivity cost for companies in Finland every year. And this is a huge cost just for CO2. So just speaking about other stuff as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm going to ask Jan shortly about just the return on investment side. But before I go to Jan, Martin, I have a question for you. Just given that the quality of the sensors and the origin, your origin being in the area of radon gas and things of that nature, I've been hearing people talking about HEPA filters for offices and things like that. Is that something that you've come across now with COVID being in the situation?
Yes, but where would the HEPA filter, how would the HEPA filter help with? And this is a bit of the misinformation and where we need to be clear about things. So I think there are two different setups. So it's whether you have recirculation of your air or whether you have full outdoor or fresh outdoor air coming in. The critical message when it comes to COVID-19, actually when it comes to spreading of airborne viruses, is you need to dilute and you need to remove the airborne suspended viruses in the air. And the only way to do that in a commercial building, you have to use your air handling units, you have to use your ventilation. Now in Norway, it's illegal to recirculate an air. That means that 100% of the air coming into your room is fresh outdoor air. I know in the UK, in the US, other parts of the world, you do have a higher degree as an energy saving measure of recirculation. That means that you're extracting air from some of the used parts, mixing it, and then mixing it with a little bit of outdoor air before it goes back into the building. In those contexts, yes, then it might help to put in a HEPA filter, which is the highest grade filter to filter out these particles in the air. But it's much better rather to have a very efficient heat exchanger, energy recovery unit, and get outdoor air because you're going to get a lot of pressure differential and energy loss on the HEPA filter because it's so tight. Yeah, it's quite expensive to operate that in an air handling unit.
Interesting.
But I think the clear message, we're going to switch this conversation to what can we do as providers of insights of the indoor air quality in a time to safely reopen or remain open. I think there needs to be a big, and these are all the guidance that we're getting from the European Association for HVAC professionals and the national governments as well. It's ventilation, ventilation, ventilation. Make sure you're ventilating that spaces and use CO2. And this is where this IoT sensors come in. Use the CO2 monitors as a proxy for how much of another person's breath that you're breathing. So you want to monitor and make sure you have low CO2 levels across the building. There's also looking at temperature and humidity in terms of how long can a suspended virus in the air remain viable.
Great, Martin. Thank you very much. I see we have somewhere between 6 and 10 minutes to go. So I'm going to ask now, Jan, return on investment. This is something, given your role as a financial man. I mean, I'm an investor, so I understand. I think this is going to be driven by occupiers, given they're the people whose workforce they want to be productive. So it's highly likely that we're going to have a situation where there's like a league table of clean buildings and the occupiers will choose the ones. So that will force the investors' hands. But can you give us some insights on what you believe the return on investment for monitoring air quality is?
Absolutely, Gavin. We talk a lot with the investors, and they're very crystal clear that they need to have a payback for these systems. And the easiest approach to that is to kind of calculate open the technical payback. So we're an engineering company, so we can reverse engineer this indoor air quality data into insight on if the systems in the property are working correctly or not. And that means that we can optimize much, much more when we know the air quality inside the buildings. And that will produce immediate energy costs. It will reduce operating costs for not having these unnecessary investigations, for example, when people are experiencing some discomfort, for example. And also in the long term, if your pressure differential, the balance is off in the building, that will damage the building. You might face huge risks in that. So you could expect typically very easily from these technical aspects, return on investment of more than 20% itself. So those are the easy things to calculate. Mm-hmm. But then what an upside on the competitive advantage of being able to tell your tenants, your clients that, hey, come to our spaces. Here we have these CO2 levels in control. And we actually took a look at 1,000 office rooms and 1,000 school rooms. And we discovered that it's actually much better off in the Finnish schools at the moment when it comes to CO2. And they I think it was something to the extent of 42% more CO2 in the office rooms at the moment. Mm. So if the investor is able to say that, come into our premises, we actually have this under control, so you don't lose your cognitive capacity. Mm. So actually you can use the full potential out of your people, which is the real cost and opportunity.
Yeah, very, very true. Rick, I'd like to just, given the AI aspect of your business, and can you just tell us, like, let's say you're putting in all of these IoT sensors and, you're collecting all of the data. Tell us what you can do with this data.
Well, that's, it has an easy answer. I think, our scientists would be a little bit sad with me oversimplifying, but when you monitor all of these things and when you have a tight relationship with the customers and with the building owner and maintenance, you're able to find a lot of incidents in the buildings that could have been prevented, that could be even predicted. And these are things such as the material emission from new furniture, which varies a lot. You can't really say based on emission tests that well. You might have issues with the pressurization, as Jan-Kristian mentioned as well. You might have PM 2.5 overflowing from filtration not actually being bypassed completely. So these are things where AI can, we can flag those events. And when we have enough of those on the data set, we simply use traditional machine learning models, traditionally maybe just a few years old, but still, and quite new technology to identify what are the patterns before this and give us a signal before this happens. So if it's possible, we don't even know ourselves. what are the identifiers. That's how many of these algorithms work. But the data knows. So there are too large data sets to go through manually, and then we get these alerts so that someone can get this on their phone before anything really bad happens. And with air quality, it's also a matter of like, it doesn't happen instantly. So you are affected over a long period of time. So you have time to react to these things as long as you're proactive.
Yeah. Martin, I was going to ask you, I mean, the dashboard that there are on these products, one of the problems that I have as an investor and as a building owner or occupier, manager, operator, is that there are so many dashboards everywhere. I mean, I have a dashboard for this, I have a dashboard for that. Is there any, future where we have a single dashboard for all of this to be monitored? So energy and air and all of these things.
It's a very good question. And I think everyone in the industry and in property that manages property are thinking about this. I'm not sure. I don't think so. First of all, I think what we need to be clear on, and you as a property investor and owner need to be clear on, is set expectations that all the systems that you put in your building should have open, accessible data, and that there are no proprietary protocols or that you're locking down data, so you haven't the ability to send it off to whatever centralized place you'd like it in. So I think setting, and historically, compared to many other industries, I have a background from fintech and I worked in financial services, and I saw the big shift that happened, say 8-9 years ago, when you got PSD1 and PSD2, the EU forcing the banks to open up their APIs and share data. And you just saw this flourishing of startup activity around financial services and fintech. And I think we are about where I entered fintech 8 years ago. That's where we are with property technology today. We're just realizing that we need to have more interoperability, more sharing of data between platforms, and ensure that all the different subsystems can specialize on what they're good at, but cooperate between each other. And that requires an openness that we haven't seen previously, and embracing of, from a software developer, these type of APIs and protocols that we're more familiar with interfacing with. Yeah, so that's the first part. It's a requirement in openness of data. The second one, I'm not sure there'll be one dashboard to rule them on, but rather interfaces that are adapted to whoever you are within the building, but a shared data repository, so accessible data. So if you're a tenant, if you're the CEO or HR manager in a building right now, you want to have access to data that tells you that the transmission risk, the virus transmission risk within your working environment is optimal. If you're a portfolio owner, you probably want energy data, and also make sure that you're compliant when it comes to radon regulation, when you're complying with other indoor air quality requirements. Get an overview of your whole portfolio. If you're a operator, if you're a technician in the building, you want a different kind of granularity and access to data to ensure that you can optimize your HVAC system, or use a platform like 720 and use the AI there to help get the monitoring. But it's not necessarily one interface to rule them out.
Okay.
That's my thought.
And thank you, Martin. Thank you. We're just about finished, but before we go, Jan-Kristian, is there a universal certification system for air quality? I know from my experience that, when it comes to energy ratings, we've got BREEAM and we've got LEED. What's the future for air quality in terms of certification?
Well, there's not a universal solution for that everywhere, obviously, but we do have these pretty strong local standards in different countries, and then we have these certifications and standards coming along actually quite fast now. So we have these well certificates and things that are really taking into consideration how the tenant and the building user are experiencing and able to also influence on the conditions. So I think it's coming, but should there be a general standard for all markets? I don't think we're going to see that.
Well, I disagree a little bit there. Yeah. I'd actually disagree a little bit there, because I think we are seeing with there's a shift now. If you take traditionally, you said energy optimized certification for our buildings, they've forgotten about the tenants. They've forgotten about who's inside the building and how the environment is impacting them. And we had too much focus on the energy optimizing our buildings. And there's now a shift and rebalancing happening. And Jan-Kristian mentioned the well certification, which has a lot of good stuff. It's more holistically about the indoor environment. You have Reset, focusing completely on continuous indoor monitoring of air quality and setting how they don't specify exactly what you need to do inside your building. They just say these are the thresholds you have to meet in terms of air quality, and whether you meet them or not. It's up to the designer and the operators to find the creative solutions to meet those targets. Not as you see, for example, in BREEAM or LEED, there's sometimes very prescriptive what you have to do. You also have Air Rated coming out to the UK, very interesting certification scheme also coming. So there's more of these internationally gathered air quality standards that give you as a tenant or a property investor a stamp of approval to say the air quality in this building is optimal for health, cognition, and comfort.
Great addition, Martin. Great addition. I think just which one will be the dominant one, and which one will the tenants also know, so that they can trust and so on. So I think that play is still open.
Jan-Kristian, I suspect it'll be something that is spread out because, as you know, LEED is, the leader in certain countries and BREEAM in other countries. So time will tell. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for your participation today. It's been great. I believe we're going to go now into a very short break. So thanks all, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Gavin. Jan-Kristian, very nice.